Okay, this is a different conversation. How the criminal justice will work, how the punishment and reward will work in the next chapter of our life. Alright, let me just explain in a way, the practice of punishment and reward and education has failed in a way the crime and the criminals are perceived in their lifetime. Some of them are perceived as heroes at some point. Let's take the certain people that in this civilization, despite they committed a crime like the train robbers or whoever became famous, the Craig's family, Craig brothers, or all of them became famous at the same time when they committed also a crime. So, in both ways, they alleviated the corruption in the system of human understanding. How does that reckon with your understanding at this moment? How does that process in your mind? Where the crime is being rewarded in both ways, but also the victim is rewarded in the same way, both ways. And yet, they both cry of injustice. The victim is injustice, so the criminal now is with injustice. Do you think that's right or wrong? I think that's absolutely right. That both sides feel victimized by the same crime, by the same action, by the same point of judgment. By the different point of judgment, different point of view. One saw the crime as a way of living, or a way of showing the world that he is much more tougher or much more clever, or the other way is that we enforce or rule of law with the same anger and the same attitude as the criminal. Is that true? You want to punish the criminal as harsh as possible for the crime, but at the same time the victim is punished harshly by the same rule of law, by the same judgment. There is no right or wrong. That's how we understood it. So the rule of law was leased and punished on the basis of one judge or 12 jurors, which will know the process and will give the verdict in the basis of their knowledge. Is how they understand life at that moment of time. So they pass a judgment, and the judge passes action, the punishment. Now that this kind of a judging people in this basis will stop. Will stop because none of them are really giving to the people the chance to recover as the victim. So the criminal. Why? Because they both got anger against each other because they never understood the reason why this became a crime. Or one knew the reason, the other ignored the law, or the other did not. Or had a different effect in his mind by, let's say, external conditions, such as drugs or alcohol or jealousy or any of those, anger against anything, the moment of craziness, it happens to all of us. But the moment of knowing the right or wrong, also it happens to all of us. And we all try our best to do the right thing. Now, what's right and what's wrong? That's up to you, to the point of view of understanding, to understand it. The point of view of your capacity of knowledge to understand it. Some of us, for example, understand the criminal at a different point, which the society has created the environment for this rise of a crime around us, this rise of fear among us. And it's the fear which pushes the punishment to the side on fairness. And it's the fear which pushes the recovery of the victim in the side of a fairness. None of them receive a fair outcome of this process of crime, no matter who did it and no matter who was the victim. Now, you say the crimes are different. Yes, they are. They are serious crimes, like somebody decided to take life away from someone other. That's absolutely a punishable crime in a way that humans have done it so far, have done it on a conscious, knowing that they're doing the word of God. No, you don't. No human being, not even I, have the right to take a human's life away from human body. So, majority of countries have moved away from death penalty. But still, even keeping a human life inside a prison forever or for a long period with not productive cause, that's a punishment of the soul, because the soul is not even indoors. The soul can continue to exfoliate its journey, no matter what the human being does. We have to give a chance to the soul to exfoliate himself. To exfoliate itself, not himself. Itself. Now, we, in a new process of a crime and reward and punishment, will be focused on awakening of people, soul. So if the crime is, for example, if in this moment is the death penalty, the criminal will be old and given a chance to work at least on his soul till he receives the enlightenment through the process of working with the truth. That will not be on what truth we believe to give to him or to her or to whoever, but with the truth they believe can set them free. So if, for example, a person believes on a dog to be his freedom, we can give him a dog to be his freedom. Why will we do that? Because it's the satisfaction of the soul is the dog. Because the man will continue to progress, the human mind and the human body will continue to progress the enlightenment. Because the soul doesn't need the enlightenment. It's the body and the mind which needs the enlightenment to release the soul. At least the soul can do the journey that is asked for to do away from the human's greed, away from the human's misunderstanding, away from the human's ignorance. So that's how the all punishments will be given out instead of taking life away from both parts of our soul, or both bodies, from our soul and from our human body. It's not right into the soul to be struggling inside of a cell where we can create a environment of the crime committed on the name of whatever he committed, whatever the crime is committed for, that the soul takes that path, and if it's in the process of enlightenment. When I say the process of enlightenment, if you think the enlightenment is an easy job, from somebody who have disregarded God's words for all his life, you're mistaken. The enlightenment path is the most difficult way of system. It's not an easy way. There will be times that you'll be locked by yourself just for the food in the four walls and to do one action only. For example, to count yourself how to breathe in and out. Imagine that, to train that brain into that process. You have to hear your heart beating in and out. Then you have to count that. None of us last more than 30 seconds, apart the one who are trained to do this process. So that will liberate a lot of souls away from the fact of the body victim, because the bodies will always be in contradictions with one and another, no matter what. We are always going to be in contradiction with one another, because our individualism is so infected into us, because we're looking for something that is not even there, into human bodies, onto human perfection. We're looking for something to be such a perfect, such a good, and such a, that not. That's the dangerous where we are today with the crime. Because wanting something that is not there, you're going to commit a action of not desirable to society, or in the future to the community. So the community will be a process in a community. How they will proceed with the person that is found to do something wrong against the rules of the new world, no, they can deal with it. I mean, it's no point with punishing people, taking their way, without they having a work into the very fundamental issue of the crime, which is ignorance. Because if you know, you will not commit a crime. You will respect another life. You will help another life. You will be another life like they will be towards you. But because ignorance is so big that you commit that little crime, that moment of judgment, of wrong judgment. Because I don't think any of us is grown up to kill someone other. Not from a young age, none of us have been told. Not from 0 to 5, at least. Okay? Because after that, humans have done a lot of crazy stuff. But a small young child is full of innocence will not be able to take the courage and shoot another human. I promise you that. Because if you give him a gun as a toy, he will shoot the human. But if he knows the gun will be damaging the other child, he will not touch the gun. I promise you that. You can put it as evidence in front of you. You can just put the guns empty in front, put 300 kids on each side. See how many kids, I'll just explain to them what is a gun. See how many kids will lift their hands up to pull a gun and go and shoot another kid. 0. It's a statistic of 0. As long as the explaining is made clearly what it is. Okay? Even you as a grown up, even I as a grown up, if we put 100 people on each side, 100 are guilty, 100 are the victims, and tell them, shoot your own victim now. Give him the gun, not fully, but just give him, just see if it's going to pull that trigger. I guarantee you, no human being deliberately without being provoked will pull the trigger. You need a provocation, and that provocation is the ignorance. Okay? So the next rule of law will function in a sense of the judges, for example, will be we don't need any more 12 jurors to give a jury, because the 12 jurors will only be required, or a jury will be required when the case requires further. Like we got now, for example, 2 types of magistrate. We got the magistrate court, and we got the higher court, inner court, whatever they call it, high court, right? That's a good system. But that now should go through the communities, into small communities. When the community first take the first action, not the judge, but the community takes the first action against the person who's found to break the rules of the community. Okay? Not just to that community, but any other community beside in entire country. So the rules will be equally or different, but you are obliged to respect the rules of every community. So that will be protected by the rule of law. So if we find, for example, a person that we don't know the respect, he will be taken first through the community journey, and the community journey will be the same thing. Process of the fundamental thinking behind the person's fundamental action behind the thinking behind the action. Okay, not the actual action, because the action really doesn't matter. It's the thinking behind, which you need to grab away from whoever has committed the crime and work with it. And that will release a lot of cases, most serious cases, which will go to the magistrate, which require a different punishment. Isolation away from the civilization. That will be forced not in the prisons anymore when it comes from magistrate courts, but in their houses, you know. And during that time, they need to be but evaluating themselves with courses and things that we can provide them for free, so they can rebuild themselves from there. And if they don't learn that lesson, learning from that point of view, so now is the third step, which is the high court. In there, the punishment starts with confined space, work through the soul. So instead of obviously they're going to have the education and the normal education that a human requires to read and write and create a passion for himself. But most of the times he will be working towards enlightenment, because there's no other education better than waking up the body. That's what enlightenment is. Waking our mind and our body in a human body. The soul doesn't need work out of enlightenment, because the soul is already out of time and out of space as existence. But in this body, because it's providing this body a frequency of knowledge, of energy, it requires also, so it's a part of also the soul, not being hard on a human mind to change path, like he was of me, for example. To me, it hit me in the head once or twice, every time I was in a different path. So my soul was very strong on me to understand the truth. So some souls are weak because, for example, if a soul has left is given a duty to look after you from the past, and that soul has not experienced the true evolution of human body in the sense of the controlling the body, is a new soul which is created by the new. Those souls are always lost get lost in the first moments of their existence. So because the inexperienced are unable to bring the human back in their senses, human mind, in their senses, and back into the system. That's why they are called lost souls. So the court will give a length of time for the full enlightenment from the top to the toes of the human body. Then when he receives that enlightenment, then he's going to have a chance to decide what he wants to do. Does he wants to leave the body? He wants to leave the body and go and prepare for the next journey, for the next body? Or does he want to continue the journey with this body by looking the life in a different path? You will see that person who comes out cannot fake the enlightenment. There is not a way on earth any human can fake the enlightenment. There is not. Because no matter what kind of enlightenment you achieve, another enlightened person will notice what you have if you are not. Because it takes a different understanding of a complete life through the enlightenment. That's over, man. I think I've been clear how the next process of a crime, punishment, and reward will function in the future in our social, in our communities, in day-to-day life, and protection from the crime. You'll see that both sides will have a different benefit out by taking the system differently from what